Hi, I'm Law Blank, and you're listening to Chasing Dreams with Aimee J.
Welcome to Chasing Dreams podcast with Aimee J. Aimee believes that realizing a life without regrets is achieved by taking chances, chasing your dreams, making moves, and overcoming your doubts. The Chasing Dreams podcast will help you overcome life's obstacles, believe in your potential, and inspire you to face your fears. And now here's the woman who is passionately pursuing her dreams, Aimee J.
Hey Dream Chasers, this is Aimee J, and thank you so much for tuning in to episode 41 of Chasing Dreams. I have a new friend I'd like to introduce to you guys today. His name is Law Blank, and he has tenaciously and passionately pursued his career in art for the past 30 years. Law has his work shown in galleries nationally and internationally, and has collectors all over the globe. Honestly, I've never met anyone who could say that, so this is really cool for me. His current work explores the dark, mythic, and confusing notions of childhood memories within his series Reconnecting Time and Memory, Buddha, Munchausen, Freud. This cathartic series has Law exploring his own memories through his visual storytelling. Law is also busy as a board member of the Sing Me a Story Foundation and the Resident Theater Company in Westchester, Pennsylvania, as well as the founder of Start Talking Art, an organization dedicated to discussions around art and creativity, and he's taken his time to come onto this show and share a little about his dream chase, and I can't thank him enough. Hey, Law, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Aimee. Thanks for having me.
Guys, listen to that voice, right? Okay, you guys are going to enjoy that voice for another 30 or so minutes, so at the end, I want you to tweet him and tell him he should do voiceover, okay?
Thank you. You're too kind.
Well, how did you even, like, when you were young, was art a thing for you?
Absolutely. And this is the whole thing about Reconnecting Time and Memory, my new series of paintings, because when I look back and I tell people at the age of 2 is when I decided I wanted to be an artist. Now, that could be a total fabrication.
I was going to say.
In my mind, that's when I decided, because I knew my mother had always said I was always drawing. It was just something, drawing, painting, doing anything creative was just part of my daily living, along with sports. So I had a kind of a mix. But
you're just the overall player, aren't you?
I like dabbling in it all. Yeah, I try not to be mediocre in anything. So I don't like the idea of jack of all trades, master of none. I want to master them all. So that's why I don't sleep.
That would explain it.
Yeah.
So at the age of 2. We'll just go with it. The age of 2.
2 to 4. Let's give it a
2 to 4. Basically, a pretty young age. You kind of knew art was your thing. So
I did.
At that young age, what was your medium of choice? Do you remember?
Colored pencils and just charcoal and dirt. I would just use dirt and paint on paper or the sidewalks. Going to the shore, I would do big drawings in the sand. Just anything I could do to just create, wasn't very good at it. I didn't actually come into my own as an artist until maybe, I'll even venture to say my 30s, I became a real artist, although I'd been practicing since, 17 or 18 and showing in galleries. But the notion was always there that that's what I was going to do. That's my purpose.
Now, at such a young age, it's very easy to be vulnerable to criticism.
Uh-huh.
Did you ever at some point say, this isn't worth it, let me stop because of it, of the negativity you were getting? Or, did you even get negativity?
No, and that's kind of a problem, actually, when, I have 2 small children now, and actually they're very good artists themselves. Like, they do very good work, and they go off the rails a lot, but I'm honest with them about it. I say, that was, it's a really great idea, let's work on this, work on that. When I grew up, it was just, oh, that's great, oh, that's wonderful, just like platitudes. Which is great because everybody wants to, pump up their children and make them feel good. But I really think there needs to be some constructive criticism even for children, done in a way that, makes them see the value of what they're doing, but also the value in continuing to develop and grow. And I don't think I got that. Even when I was a young artist showing in galleries, I just felt like I was getting platitudes from people, and nobody was really giving me honest feedback until I met my wife, and then she certainly started giving me
She didn't hold back.
Yeah. But I think there's real value in that, and I think adults tend to forget that, you know, children are tough, and they need to learn, and they need to learn different lessons in different ways, and it can't just be about all positive reinforcement, as in, you're doing a great job, that's awesome, that's fantastic. They have to have some kind of, you know, critical, you know, feedback as well, done in a way that still bolsters their spirit and their creativity and their confidence.
See, I think you said an interesting point right there, though. Done in a way to also bolster. And a lot of people don't really know how to give constructive criticism. Yeah. And I guess they fall back on general comments and platitudes, as you will, in general. So maybe it's interesting because it's curious. Like, if I gave constructive criticism to a 5-year-old and I'm not sure if I have any standing to say anything because, one, I'm not very good at that kind of thing. Right. But do you think that in general people should give constructive criticism even if they're not in the discipline?
Well, I think at that age you're not really in the discipline. You're just kind of doing whatever comes your way, and it's just part of, you know, evolving in nature as a human being. So I think I guess being critical is more helping them, you know, harness their creativity. And so basically what I do with my 6-year-old now, you know, he's always in the studio with me. He's always painting. I always gave him his own canvases, and he has his own paints. And, you know, sometimes you just take a canvas, just take blue and just, you know, smear it on the canvas and that's painting. I'm like, well, that's great. Well, how about we add a few different colors? Or is there something you have in your mind, you know, that, you know, I could draw out for you, and then you start painting around that. You know, maybe we can collaborate. Just a way to show that there's the act and the fun of just like getting dirty and creating that way. And then there's the creating something that you can look back on and say, I can articulate what that was. And that's what I always try and get them to. And I don't think there should be such a huge emphasis where you're, you know, like a drill sergeant getting them to, you know, grooming them to be, you know, a master artist. But I like the idea of teaching kids at a younger age to be thoughtful about what they're doing. And it doesn't have to be all the time. It's just like on those moments, like, okay, we have studio time. We're going to sit down and we're going to, you know, work on a painting. Let's think about what we're going to do. And just this year, I started putting together still lifes for them. You know, I put, you know, a whole bunch of objects on the table. I'll say, okay, I want you to draw that first as best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry about it. Draw it. Create, you know, your composition, and then we're going to paint it. And he's never really did that before. He just kind of did things out of memory. So that's the progression, just, you know, slowly introducing, and then it becomes more commonplace for him. It's like, oh, okay, well, the thought process is I have to have an idea in my head. Then I want to figure out how am I going to represent that idea. Do I need to have objects? Do I need to do it from, you know, sketches? And so he's really working on a process that will help him out through the rest of his life, not just in art, but in any facet, business, school. So it's a lot of work thinking about those things as a parent or as an educator, but I think it's invaluable. No,
I think that's a good point. It kind of moves away from the everybody's a winner for participating kind of mindset, which, you know, has its place. You know, but I think you're right that there is something to be said about constructive criticism because there can be something about building character also. You know, that being said, don't just throw, you know, negative comments at a person without being helpful. That's just not helpful at all.
Yeah. And there's no room for, you know, if a 5-year-old does a painting and you're like, oh, that composition is way off. I wouldn't use that color with that. You know, that's ridiculous. I mean, nobody should ever do that because there's only positive reinforcement for the kids. But again, when I say constructive criticism, it means, you know, helping them get to that next level.
Yeah.
And doing it in a way that, again, doesn't make them feel like they've made a mistake. It's like there are no mistakes. It's like you're just building upon what you've learned here and you're adding some more elements as we go further down the road.
So as you were growing up, right, growing into this thing you're loving, did you have a mentor or guide who provided that kind of criticism? Because you said that you didn't really get that much, but, you know, especially in schools, I would think that there would be someone to help.
Well, my mother is very creative, and, you know, she loved art, you know, when she was younger, and she was very good at drawing. So I always, you know, watched her when she would do some drawing, and that always inspired me. But frankly, I was always in the library. Even as a kid, I was a geek. I loved pulling books out, and I would read books about space and grab different books about Van Gogh. Like even when I was young, I was pulling books out on some of the masters, and we had books in the house on that. So really and even the Sunday comics. Like when the old school comic strips. I'd always be drawing Snoopy and
I miss those.
Garfield. Yeah, I know. They
Today with the digital newsletter news and stuff, I do kind of miss the opening the paper for the comics section alone.
Right. But you know what? Actually, Mad Magazine, I used to get that when I was a young teenager, and I loved the drawings in there, and they were just so irreverent, and so I would always copy them. So it's doing a lot of copying. Like I lay no claims to being an artist who can draw something just out of my head. Like if you asked me to draw, draw him, and I would miserably fail unless I could actually have somebody sitting in front of me or a photograph in front of me. I mean, I know that limitation of myself. So I would always be like kind of copying and rendering things that way.
So at what age did you start showcasing your art in galleries?
My first showing was when I was 18.
Really?
Yeah, it was in Sunset Hill Art Gallery in Westchester. Small gallery, but it was really... because I was like this young kid with all these, established, 30, 40, 50-year-old artists, and which was pretty cool. And I'm still shocked they accepted the work that I had put in there. Everybody's critical of their early work, but yeah. I think it was just, and this is part of the advice I give to a lot of younger artists, being an artist isn't just about creating the work and trying to put it in front of somebody and have them accept it. You're part of that package. And what I found when I was younger, because I was a little bit more social and outgoing than I am today, I would just, my energy, my enthusiasm, my passion for it, even if I wasn't the greatest artist then, I was still developing just that kind of film of passion that just kind of touched everybody. And I think made opportunities for me that normally wouldn't have been there. So there's something about really believing in your work, whether you're, good or not. It's a matter of having that confidence, which I think every artist, you hear about when they're younger. I had a misguided ego, a misguided sense of myself as this great artist, or I had visions that I'm going to be in the museums and I'm going to be important. If I didn't have that, I would have given up way early because the work didn't reflect that. So it's like giving birth, my wife, she and I talk about it.
I was going to say, you have reference for this?
Yeah. I have two children. I pay attention. I didn't experience it physically, but she described it to me. It's just, you have this baby growing inside of you, and then all this pain to get it out. And when it's finally out, something happens where she says you just forget the pain. You only remember the good things. And it's like that euphoric phase that I think artists go through when they're creating, because you don't remember the pain and how crappy the work was, because you've got this euphoria of ego.
Sure.
That's the bubble that's around you that allows you to continue on without giving up, because you are crap. Pardon the expression. And I really was. I mean, I had a lot of passion, a lot of really creative ideas. I just didn't know how to convey it, So it was really a decade of just
trying to find yourself.
Yeah, just trying anything, everything. No rhyme or reason. And I thought, well, that's my thing. I just do whatever. I'm not going to do a series. I'm not going to fall into those pigeonholes. But those pigeonholes are really critical when you become more of a thoughtful artist and more accomplished. And I had a friend, Earl Green. He's a piano player. He studied under Thelonious Monk. Amazing guy. And the best advice he ever gave me, after I questioned him about practicing the same song over and over and over again, I come, why are you playing that again? You've done it a zillion times. I hear it every single day. And he's like, my man, and that's what he said, my man. He's like, I play this so much that when I want to play it live, and I want to go out and I want to do something out here or over there, I want to take it as far out as I can go. I always know that I can come back because I have it so down cold. I know every bit of this, baseline piece that I can experiment. I can take it to a different level and still come right back and fit into where I need to be. So it's basically you know something so well that it's not a hindrance for you anymore. It allows you to go beyond what you know without the fear of not knowing something. So that's the advice I always, I look at those formative years as, my just kind of risking everything, because I didn't know that it was a risk. It was just, let's get all this stuff out and then figure out how to pull it all into some cohesive body of work or just a thought. Like childhood memory is what I'm using right now as my the subject matter. And it's so expansive because it really, I can go out in any direction, but ultimately that key, that timeline is all about childhood memory. And everything that happens has to come back on that timeline and fit. If it doesn't fit, it's not part of the series. But I couldn't be that thoughtful when I was young. It's just, I'm just going to create this and whatever.
Well, given that you were so young, I mean, I'm not wrong in saying that it was unusual for you to be featured in a gallery at that age, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's unusual or usual. It's probably unusual because most people would go, finish their art degree, and then start showing. But, some people like me, I was impatient, and I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to, or at least socially in the art circles, start putting my work out that young. And there's certainly, I didn't set a precedent. There's been
people, you're not the first and you're not necessarily the last. I
didn't know any better. So, which is a good thing, because again, I just did it, and consequence be damned, and it worked out well for me.
Well, as someone not in the know about the art community and such, what does it take to be featured like that when you were young? I mean, in normal things, I know you submit an application and you're like, hey, I'm just waiting to hear if they take it or not. That's what I'm envisioning. But is that anywhere close to what happens?
Yeah, usually the process, I mean, again, because I didn't know any better, I would just take my portfolio, walk right into the gallery and say, hey, can you see my work? It's a big faux pas in normal gallery settings. You submit, through writing, I want to submit my portfolio for review to be part of your gallery. And there's a whole formal process, but, I was dealing on a local level. So basically you have local galleries, you have your regional galleries, your national galleries, and international galleries. They all play by different rules. Mm-hmm. Local galleries, it's casual. It's like, you're a local boy. Come on in. I'll take a look at your work, and sure, we'll put a couple pieces in the gallery. Why not? But as you get further and further up in the hierarchy, then you have to become more and more professional and have more and more of a package that you submit to them. With the advent of, online capabilities, the submission process is by far so much better now. Before we used to have, are you still there?
Yeah, I think I'm here. I'm still here.
Okay. Sorry, I just got a note on my computer that we lost connection.
Oh.
Before, we'd have to take photographs. Okay, cool. We have to take photographs of our paintings, really good photographs, and have slides made. It's a whole process. It just took so much time. And if you didn't have a camera, if you didn't have the money to process your film, then it was all for naught, because you wouldn't be able to submit anything. Now it's easy. You just take a picture on your iPhone and upload it, and hopefully it's good enough for submittal.
So is this something that people do themselves, or is it like in the theater community or in Hollywood where you have an agent who does it for you, or you could do it yourself?
Yeah, you certainly can. That's something I'm actually considering now, just getting representation so that the business end of it doesn't, I tend to be my own bottleneck because I have so many, coals in the fire.
Yeah.
Where an agent can actually help guide you and your work. There's always this odd, tug of war between gallery owners, agents, and artists, because everybody has a different vision of what the work should be. Mm-hmm. An artist should retain autonomy over that, and the agent and the gallery should work within the confines of what the artist creates. But that's not always the case. Sometimes the artist or the gallery and the agents will influence the artist to create work that will fit within a certain space or exhibition. It happens, but it just depends on what the artist's goal is. Like, they might be like, yeah, well, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to actually deviate from what I'm envisioning and paint these things so it'll fit in this gallery. It all depends on how important that opportunity is to you.
So is it's so much more complex than I ever imagined. I mean, it's not just writing or drawing or creating art and then, putting it somewhere. There's seems like there's so many more details. Is that what getting a degree does? Help you learn what the details are?
Absolutely. I think a lot of art programs they do prepare, their artists for the future, but I think it's a whole new world out there, especially with the deluge of artists online. It's really saturated. So the thing that will set an artist apart from the millions of people that are either hobbyists, they do it on the weekend, or they just like painting, they put their work out there to see if they can sell some of it. Might not have any professional aspirations, and might not even be that good. Like there's a whole spectrum of like great artwork and just stuff that should just remain
private.
Your mother's wall or the refrigerator. And I'll be bold enough to say that. I'm sorry, there's just some work that should not be out there. And it's out there, and it's taking up space for, other artists who are really trying to, focus on their careers. But that's what we have to deal with. I mean, and so you figure out creative ways to set yourself apart. And I think one, being professional, having a great website, having great photographs taken of your work, being able to articulate your work, being able to network and talk to people, not just online. People have this notion that, I'm going to put my gallery out there online, I'm going to put my work out, and it's just going to sell like that. It's not that way. Online is just a vehicle. Most of my paintings sell because I actually talk to somebody, I build a relationship, and they feel like they're a part of my work because we've had that conversation. We've built a relationship. You can't do that online. Although on LinkedIn, I mean, I'll give a shout out to LinkedIn, which shocked me that it's one of the better art communities that I've ever been part of, where you can have really good conversations. Great artists are out there and have very thoughtful responses and are in the business and are helping younger people as well. And that's one of my things. Like, I want to make sure we're mentoring as older artists. Like back when I was young, it's like the old artists were so
unapproachable.
And annoyed with the younger artists because younger artists were annoying. I'm sorry, it's just I was like,
as one myself, I could.
You're the establishment. You're so lame. You're doing the same thing. You're a sellout. Blah blah blah. Which is all ridiculous. That's just what we say when we're young because we're upset that we're not there yet. So, but that the online world is only a tool, and I think that's what younger artists need to realize. You still have to be able to articulate and actually talk to somebody face to face if you want to have a career in art. You need to be able to talk a gallery owner into taking your work on. If it doesn't really fit into what they're doing or they don't see your vision, you need to be able to articulate it. Collectors, anybody could be a collector. Every time I take a new job, I think QVC, Home Shopping Network, I started working there, it was back in 87 or 88 when they first started in Westchester. And I'd sit there and I'd spend all night, while on the phones taking calls, drawing, and bringing my photographs, my paintings in. I sold so many pieces of work to just my coworkers and people just because they'd be interested, and then feel like they're part of it. So that level of like networking, being able to communicate about your work is so critically important. You can't rely on the coldness of online to really pull people in.
Now, you've been featured nationally, internationally. Have you seen your work in international galleries? Do you go to see what that's like?
No.
Really?
Usually it's just being shipped here and there, like the UK or Costa Rica. Well, Costa Rica is easy because my father lives there. And that's, and I have a lot of paintings that have sold there. And the former president of Costa Rica has some of my work. But I haven't seen them in formal galleries. So I know they've been there, but it's just, I stay right here in my base and I just send things out. And it'd be nice to travel to those. But
I was going to say, Law, I think you're due a trip to see something of your work.
Well, I'm hoping one of these days I'll be in the Venice Biennial, and then I'll certainly go or get my work in Paris. That would be nice. So,
that would be amazing.
Yeah. So I have goals. I still, I'm just getting back. I mean, I've been painting in earnest again after a long hiatus for about 4 or 5 years, and I haven't pursued. Like, I'm just getting ready to start shopping galleries again, only because you want to have a body of work that really impresses and really shows what you're doing, with regards to your career. And this is the body of work I'm creating right now. So I'm just on the cusp of, putting the work back out there. And in my younger days, I'd just be thinking locally or even like regional, like the East Coast. And now it's just because it's easy. It's less work. It's less like trying to,
Sure.
send work back and forth. But now, I'm finally at that point in my life where I'm uber serious about my career. And that means spending more and more time doing those type of business related things, putting together my portfolio, my packet, really doing the research on the galleries. It takes a lot of time. And artists, I don't think, who are just starting out, don't realize how much time you really should invest in that. You want to find the galleries that are speaking to what you're doing and are going to look at your work and say, that really fits into what we're speaking to here. So doing that internationally is difficult because you only get like online views of what's going on. And then you can, I look for artists who've already shown in those galleries and ask them what their experience was and, and any tips or, or
But that's also the benefit of probably having an agent, right?
Probably, yeah. And agents have those connections, and it sure costs you money to have an agent or a percentage of your sales, but it might be well worth it because every step you take in furthering your career and getting more representation, more sales, it keeps going from there. At least if you're consistent. So having that agent would only lead to more opportunities, I'm sure. You could do it yourself, but I'm finding, I work for, a children's hospital. I'm on the board of all these different organizations. So my time, and I have 2 small kids, and my family comes first before any of that. So when all of that's put to bed, work, other organizations, my family, that's
right.
when
This is also why you don't sleep.
Right. So so you have the conundrum. Do I work on painting, or do I work on getting the paintings in some place, into a gallery? I can't do both. It's too daunting and it zaps your energy. So that's why, getting an agent probably would be a very prudent move.
Well, it also explains what you were saying earlier about being your own bottleneck.
Yeah.
In a sense. I mean, it's not that it doesn't happen. It just is a slower process.
Right.
As a result, right?
It is. And that brings up a very good point. And this is what I struggle with. I had a conversation with my wife about this the other day. Because she's like, well, you don't need to paint every night. Just come to bed because I'm getting tired and exhausted. And then and I'm trying to explain to her, there's something non-tangible that I feel like this deadline that just like kind of exists in my head. Like it's in there. And I can't shake it for some reason. I feel compelled to create the work, whether I'm in the mood to create it, whether I'm not in the mood to create it, whether, whatever's going on, I just feel this deadline weighing over me for no reason whatsoever. I mean, I could...
Right, it's self-imposed. Right,
self-imposed. I could not paint for a couple years and it wouldn't bother anybody or anything, and the world would go on and my work would be just as good in a couple years if I picked it up again. I've proven that because I've taken so many hiatuses. But it just is something that cannot be quelled for some reason. And I'm not quite sure what that is, but I question whether, I have to drive myself so hard and maybe, take a more leisurely pace, but I don't think I'm going to find that. I keep trying.
It could be your passion that's just pushing you.
It is, but you know what? Creating art or creating anything, because I love writing music and just doing a whole bunch of things in the creative realm. It's taxing. Like art, I found art in particular, painting really exhausts me in a good way and in a bad way. It takes a lot of emotional, like kind of, wind out of my sails. And I feel when I finish a really tough painting, like I did a painting a couple weeks or last month, it was called Waiting for My Father. And it's a painting of my son's at the top of these stairs at one of our local train station. And, he's leaning away from the staircase and there's fish like swimming, salmon swimming up the stairs. And it's just kind of about, you're not having a connection with your father or father being absent, which struck a nerve with a lot of different people when I showed it to them. Everybody's asking, well, is that part of, is that your experience? I'm like, well, not really. It's like, I glean from my experience and my emotional core
sure.
to present this. but it's really storytelling. But it really, underlying it all is my emotions that goes into this work. And it's exhausting. And then I have to be on point for my children and make sure that I'm not like emotionally vacant for them. Like, so I have this weird, how much do I give? How much is being taken, and how much can I have for everybody else? So that's why I don't push too hard. Like, I know I'm going to get back in galleries, and I know I'm going to find other representation, but I'm not going crazy trying to do it like right now. And I have to remind myself of that every now and then, that you have time. The deadline is just a construct, and it's not real. And, enjoy what you're doing, or try to. So, I really enjoy what I'm doing. It's just, it's hard in the moment because you're really like just everything's crunching together at the same time.
That really brings a great segue to what we were talking about offline, about when people chase their dreams. You have a day job. Plus, yes. You are also a board member of the Sing Me a Story Foundation, the resident theater company in Westchester. Mm-hmm. You're a founder of the Start Talking Art, and it's you have all these things going. It's a lot of them related to art, which is your dream, but you have this day job, and right. That alone is time intensive, right? It takes about probably 8 to 12 hours of your day.
Yep.
And then you come home, you have a family, right? Mm-hmm. Priority, taking that time. We were talking offline about how there are some people who are kind of, it's very black and white. You either can chase your dream or you can't.
Right.
And if you have something else going on, forget it. I can't chase my dream because clearly I have all these other things going on. What is it about your schedule? Because, you don't sleep. We talked about that. Mm-hmm. But yet you still are doing this. Why?
Because I must. That's a short answer. The thing with my career, having my day job at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which I love. I love my job. I love working with the doctors and the nurses, and I create clinical education, education on safety, and act as a consultant for education programs there. And it's very rewarding. It's a nonprofit hospital. There's a great mission to it. And it provides me a very good salary so that I don't have to worry about, providing for my family and, making sure that my kids, have what they need and have savings for college. So that to me is worth the sacrifice of taking that chunk of time out of my creative day. And it also is what inspires me to continue to create, even if I'm exhausted, because the legacy I want for my kids, and this is the question of why does an artist create? Is it for their own sense of immortality? You want to be famous, you want to be in the museums. I thought that way when I was younger, but what's really turned for me since having my children in a very profound way is I want them to know me better when I'm gone. I had children when I'm old. I had my first child when I was 40. So I know I'm not going to be around forever. And I'm hoping they'll understand me more as adults, even if I'm not around, by looking at my work. And these vehicles like Start Talking Art and being on these different boards allow me a different voice to show them the different things I'm passionate about. And my blog on art gives them insight into why I create, how I created. So all these things take a lot of time, but it's worth it because I think it's the legacy my kids deserve, and it's less about me now. That's why I don't have to show my work to anybody or sell another piece because I have that financial security. I'll still pursue that because I'm curious if I was working full-time as an artist again, like I was when I was younger, what that would look like right now and where my inspiration and my work ethic would take the work. I don't know. Do I create so fervently because I don't have the opportunity to do it full time? And every moment is like this precious little gift that I get to create something. So it's a whole mix of, everything. But that's what drives me. That's why I don't sleep, because I'm passionate about just creativity in general and helping others. And that's why Sing Me a Story Foundation is, getting musicians paired up with children in at-risk situations and, foster care in hospitals, where they can write their own story and have it created by a musician, turned into a song, that philanthropically and then just based on my core beliefs is awesome, because it's another way of building children's, especially who are at risk, their esteem and that they're part of something bigger, that they're not alone. The theater is just a great thing for any community, so I'm involved in that heavily, but that also allows me to talk to a whole different group of people about creativity, about the artistic process, not just 2D art. It's about acting, music. It's where all the arts come together, and then start talking art is my vehicle just for really crystallizing all those conversations about creativity at the foremost. It's like, why do we do what we do, and let's pull in the public who aren't artists and start speaking a bit more plainly rather than in art speak, which has always been one of my pet peeves. Like, I've never wanted to be that artist who spouts out theory and absurd explanations for my work, when there really are simple explanations, and that's okay. It's okay to be simple and have a direct idea, and it doesn't have to be convoluted by some mysticism or
right.
or other things like that. And so those are my drivers, and they're exhausting, but it's well worth it. I wouldn't change a thing, to tell you the truth.
I mean, that being said, in the future, if there comes a point, with your paintings, with what you're doing, galleries, collectors, do you think that if a point came where you could be financially stable just doing art full time, would you be open to that?
Absolutely. I could actually, yeah.
Okay.
I'd be open to it, but again, I really would be curious how that would affect my work process, because painting, when I do it, because I do it in these small spurts now, and like I said, it's draining. It's very draining in a weird way. It's something I can't even describe with any kind of articulation. It's it drains your emotion, it drains you physically.
Right, because you're putting yourself into this art.
Yeah, and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I do exercises where I'm just doing a painting that's just a still life, and it's really working on technique. But even that, because you're just constantly thinking, at any moment I could make a horrible mistake and this piece is ruined. But you can certainly fix it. But there's just this weird tug of war of getting your brain to talk to your hand and then having it forget about all that and just letting it happen. But yeah, working full time, having longer stretches of time to kind of exhaust myself, I don't know how that would be. I'm curious. I'd certainly take it on. I'd take it on as a challenge.
Right, because it's a double-edged sword, right? It could be great that it's full time, but at the same time, the other side could be that it wears you out. Yeah. Or you lose creativity, maybe.
I'm a big fan of naps, so I figure you work a little bit, you nap a little bit, you work a little bit, you nap a little bit. I'd be all for that.
Naps are very powerful things.
Oh, they're awesome.
So before we wrap up, Lo, I did wonder, when I first heard about you and the things you're doing, mostly painting, what is a different medium that if you could go back or if you had a chance to explore, you'd be interested in trying?
I tried most everything. I'm a big failure as a sculptor, so I wouldn't pursue that. But you know what? Because I've done performance art. I love that. I did that for about 5 or 6 years and traveling the collegiate circuit. I love working in oils, and I haven't worked in oils for quite a while just because I'm impatient and I love the immediacy of acrylic. But I just started using acrylic on paper and with ink and dried watercolors to get this really kind of dreamy effect on the paper, which kind of changed the way I work. Like I did more detailed drawings, prior to painting, and so that was an exploration into different, even just different surfaces. Working on paper wasn't really my forte until the kids took over my big studio, and I'm working in a small studio. I'm like, okay, I need to work smaller now. So how do I change that? And it really changed my work profoundly, to tell you the truth. Just that something so and you just didn't realize that something would have an impact on your life, but just moving from one space to another, which I've done a lot, but moving to a smaller space, which I'm not used to, really kind of helped me focus and got me more detail oriented. And when I finally go back to larger paintings, I loosen up more. So I try and mix it up between the two to keep it fresh. But I don't know if there's any other medium I like right where I am. I mean, this is my zone. And, I love doing video work. I should mention that. That's one of those, I love being behind the camera and producing work for the hospital, but even for personal, projects. So that's something I might incorporate into my work in the future, some video elements and multimedia, which I've done in the past, but how to incorporate it into the 2D painting would be really interesting, especially with the advent of really thin monitors that you can actually put on a surface without it being like a big bulky monitor, bulging out from behind a canvas.
This sounds like a potential future project.
Yeah, indeed.
So, Law, before we wrap up, what is one thing you would recommend to a dream chaser? It could be a book, a resource, organization, piece of advice, anything. What would you tell them?
Well, when it comes to books, people always ask me, well, what are you reading? What is, what's inspiring you? And I always revert back to the classics. Like I love Somerset Maugham and The Razor's Edge. That was always one of my, I don't know why that book spoke to me, and it really inspired me for some reason. It was kind of a dour book, but that's one I would recommend reading. Even like the old beats and like On the Road and Ginsberg's poems and stuff. But I think the advice I would rather give is, based on my own experience. I mean, I've been creating art for over 30 years, and it hasn't been 30 constant years of just creating. I start, I stop, I take new jobs, I've moved. There's all these things in life that keep you from progressing in your creative endeavors. But that doesn't mean they're over. And I have a lot of friends, and people I've known that had dreams and they got paused or put aside for whatever reason, and they just felt they were dead. And that's the last thing you should think. Dreams, that you're pursuing, your passions, you're the only barrier to picking that back up. Don't let anybody else keep you from picking up and pursuing your passions. Fear, lack of confidence, lack of time, lack of money. None of these things should keep you from pursuing what it is you need to do. If you're creative, you find ways around it. I found it by just brute force, not sleeping, finding cheaper ways to create the work that I need to create. Fear, you just bully through it, and the worst thing that can happen is, you're unsuccessful at something, but then you figure out why you're unsuccessful, and then you turn that into a true success. We don't get anywhere without failing and learning from those failures. So I always say, don't let your dreams lay dormant. There's always time. There's always a way to kickstart it again.
That was a great piece of advice, guys. Don't be so focused on the negative. Look at the positive. What do you have? And if it's something you really want, you'll find a way. And Law, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing that as well as your story.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Guys, how much fun is Law? He is awesome. And even after we finished recording, we had such a good time chatting. And take his advice. Know what you want, own it, and don't focus on the negatives. Focus on what you really want, because sometimes that passion that you have for your dream can outweigh the negative and can push you to finding a way to make it happen. Sometimes if you keep looking on the negative, you're going to miss out on all the positives of chasing your dream. So keep that in mind. And remember, you can find all the links mentioned today on the show notes page for this episode at chasingdreamshq.com/episode 41. That's episode 41. Until next time, Dream Chasers, keep chasing.
Thank you so much for listening to Chasing Dreams. Aimee would love to connect with you and hear all about your pursuit of chasing your dreams. Connect with her on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram via @ChasingDreamsHQ. Or you can find Aimee on Twitter @Aimee J 21. That's AIMEEJ21. Be sure to visit headquarters over at ChasingDreamsHQ.com for more inspiration, motivation, and resources to help with your own dream chase. We hope you'll join Aimee next week. And until then, keep chasing.